Hello, my name is Olurotimi Osha, and I'm still discussing women's history. It's March the 30th, 2026. I did an earlier video in which I drew a timeline of women in the legal profession in America from the 17th century up to the 19th century. And now I'm continuing from the 20th century. So by 1920, um, women were allowed to practice in all state bars in America. However, despite the fact that the first woman who graduated from a law school in America did so in 1870, and that was did the first woman who graduated from a law school in America. Uh, graduated in 1870, and that was Ada Kepley from Chicago University Law School in Illinois. It wouldn't be until 1950, which, well, our pioneer law school in America, Harvard Law School, wouldn't be until 1950 or until Harvard Law School would admit the first women, uh, and that was the class of 1953. Of course, it takes 3 years to graduate from law school in America. So law school's 3 years. So Ruth Bader Ginsburg herself, I think she enrolled in 1956, and there were only 9 women in the class she was in, the class of 500, a class of 500. There were only 9 women enrolled in that class at Harvard Law School. Yeah, although yes, we know Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who became a justice on the United States Supreme Court. She became the second woman to be a justice on the United States Supreme Court. She did get her law degree from Columbia Law School. However, she uh, transferred, although she faced discrimination, like every woman that was there at Harvard Law School when she was enrolled. But the reason she transferred to Columbia Law School was not because of discrimination per se. She transferred because her husband got a job in New York, and so she transferred from uh, uh, Harvard, even though she'd done 2 years at uh, I think she'd done about roughly 2 years at Harvard. She would end up transferring to Columbia Law School because of her husband's employment, and she graduated from Harvard Law School. Now, Ruth Bader Ginsburg has, stated that while she was enrolled at Harvard Law School, the dean of her law school would invite them to their homes, invite all the students. This is a practice that many many Harvard professors do, and the deans. It's common in law schools as well. I remember, I mean, in my law school, I went to at least the professors. A professor invited us to lunch. One of my professors, and that's actually Professor Jonathan Turley. He's a no, he's a notable pundit, very prominent pundit on television. That's Professor Jonathan Turley. Yeah, so it's common for law school professors, deans to invite students to their homes, and so the dean of Harvard Law School at the time she was enrolled, his name was Erwin Griswold. She said when he invited them to their home, invited students to their home, that he would question the women, and she was included, and asked why they were enrolled in law school and if they understood that they were taking a man's place, right? So even though all the state bars now admitted women to practice law, there was still this gender discrimination very much entrenched. Still this discrimination against women, and even though they were few in number, so this was the discriminatory, toxic experience of Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg when she was enrolled at at Harvard. But of course, things have changed significantly. Now, let me mention regarding Ruth Bader Ginsburg's accomplishments. Because she transferred to Columbia, she became the first woman to be on the law review of two uh, prominent, that's Ivy League law schools. So she was on the law review of Harvard Law School when she was enrolled there, and then she was also on the law review of Columbia University Law School, that's Columbia Law School, when she transferred, and that was where she got her law degree, Columbia Law School. Now, so um, so there were these heavily discriminatory attitudes, against women, still at the middle of the 20th century, and their enrollment numbers were very, very low. But that changed by the, I think, by the in the 1990s, and so around 2025, sorry, around 2005. Since I'm talking about Harvard, let me just note that women equaled, the enrollment of women was equal to the enrollment of men in 2005 uh, at Harvard University generally, right? This was, they were 50-50, right, in 2005. And I think by 2006, I think women had now surpassed them by 1%. I know this because I lived in Cambridge, Massachusetts uh, between 2006 and 2009. And my home was very close to Harvard Square. And I remember I was once walking past and I saw Harvard students, they were actually celebrating. They had placards out and saying, women had now, surpassed the women registration enrollment had now surpassed the men at Harvard University. Now, however, at Harvard Law School, um, women would not equal the enrollment of the men until 2016, roughly 2016, 2016, 2017. But now I know currently by 20, today, the enrollment of women at Harvard Law School surpasses that of men. So women are now, they graduate from Harvard Law School at about 54%. So the ratio now is, the proportion is 54% women enrolled at Harvard Law School today. That's roughly 2025, 2026. Today is 2026. So that women have now surpassed men in enrollment at Harvard Law School. And this is consistent across board. By 2023, uh, 55% of all graduates from American law schools were women. So by 2023, so there are more women graduating from law school and enrolled in law school than there are men. So women have now surpassed. So things have changed. There's been this tidal change. And this is consistent across the board of the female enrollment in universities. There are now more women enrolled in universities than there are men. Now, how did this change come about? You notice that women have been activists, right? They've been more active, and they've been more militant is not the word, but they've engaged in activism, right? They've gone to court, they've done demonstrations, they've used lobbying, different ways to address any form of gender discrimination, right? So we see during the suffrage movement, women were very instrumental in the abolitionist movement as well as the suffrage movement as well. And so we see that in the professions as well. Now they dominate at least enrollment and graduation in law, in the legal profession. The same thing in accounting as well. I have an accounting degree as well. I graduated from accounting. When I was in business school and accounting school, there were more women enrolled in accounting than there were men. I remember this is this was a long time ago. This was in the noughties, right? In between 1999 and 2002, 2003. I remember the professors mentioned it then that there are now more women enrolled in accounting than men. So by the time I was in law school, um, I went to law school much later on. By the time I was in law school, at George Washington University Law School, there were more women enrolled than there were men, and in my class, and of course, even in my section. So law school, your people, students are traditionally divided into sections. So in my section, the section may consist of 100 students, depending on the size of the law school. So in my section of 100, um, I was the only black male, right? So GW is a predominantly white institution. So I was the only black male um, in law school, right? In my section of law school. However, um, which is bizarre, I was the only black male. Uh, but there were several black American women. There are several, not just black American, there are Nigerian women from other nations. So there are several black women, maybe 10, um, but I was the only black male then. But there were more women enrolled generally. Uh, so the, there's the proportion, across the board, women now outpace men in college enrollment and in the professions, but it's more. I think there's a greater distortion when it comes to black people. So black men are not. They're not. They don't engage in the sort of activism that they're being discriminated against, or they need to increase enrollment for men, for black men. I don't think they engage as much. And of course, there's also that classroom to prison pipeline that's sort of eliminating or excluding black men from the professions or from school, from college altogether, which is very unfortunate. But again, I think this is something, activism has been a way that women generally have been able to address the ills, the discrimination, the established, entrenched discrimination that has, traditionally barred them from the professions, or, and from college. And I think activism has been a successful tool which they've used. Yeah. So pretty much that was what I guess I wanted to discuss about the progress of um, women during Women's History Month in the legal profession. Today, the U.S. Supreme Court has three women, concurrently. I think that's the largest number of women that we've. Well, do we have three? I think we have four women. I was thinking of the progressives. The Supreme Court has nine people. I think there are now four women. That's the largest number that we've ever had on the Supreme Court. Largest number of women. Let me see. The three progressives are, of course, um, Eleanor Kagan, whom I've met. I met her when she was a dean. I met her. I walked up to her and I had a conversation with her. I saw her at a store. She used to be dean at Harvard Law School. So I met her and I walked up to her. I had a conversation with her. Eleanor Kagan, she used to be, of course, dean of Harvard Law School before she went over to, um, before she became appointed as a Supreme Court justice, I think by President Barack Obama, if I can recall. It's been such a long time. So Eleanor Kagan, she's a progressive, she's a Democrat. And then of course, there's Justice Sotomayor, who's also a Democrat. And then there's the first Black American um, to be first Black American to become a justice of the U.S. Supreme Court, and that's Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson, who's double Harvard, by the way. Now, interestingly, the uh, the constitution of women on the U.S. Supreme Court is very diverse, right? Very diverse. Uh, Justice Eleanor Kagan is Jewish, right? She's a Jewish American. Um, Justice Sotomayor is Hispanic. She's Latina, right? So the first Latina on the Supreme Court. She's right, and I know she graduated from Princeton and Yale. Um, Justice, since I'm stating their schools, I might as well state Eleanor Kagan. I think she graduated from Harvard Law School, and she went to one of those elite schools in England as well. So then uh, then the fourth person is uh, Justice Amy Coney Barrett, right? Uh, she uh, she got her law degree. She went to an undergrad called Rhodes College, if I can still remember. But her law degree, she got it from Notre Dame, Notre Dame, and she was first in her class. I remember there was that elitist uproar, outrage, uh, the elitist pearl clutching, because she didn't, you know, University of Notre Dame is a top quality school, but there's this um, new elitist. I think it started in the late 20th century, in which Supreme Court justices just had to come from an Ivy League law school. Even though this isn't how it started. Uh, our most admired Chief Justice, our longest Chief Justice, John Marshall, he never went to a law school. He never graduated from law school. And he's the most, he made the most significant impact on our legal system, apart from Justice Warren much later on in the 20th century. But uh, Chief Justice, um, Chief Justice John Marshall. I don't think other than maybe a year, just a few. He never had formal education. Very intelligent. He never had any formal. He hardly had formal education. He never went to law school. That's Chief Justice John Marshall, who was actually a cousin of Thomas Jefferson. But Chief Justice John Marshall, a very remarkable man, never went to law school, like I said, and he's famous for very significant cases like Marbury versus Madison, right? Marbury versus Madison, which gave us judicial review, right? Um, you can look it up. I did a video discussing Marbury versus Madison. So Justice Amy Coney Barrett, is it Barrett or Jarrett? I don't know. I don't know why it just skipped me, because I've written an article about her the time when she became. Um, I wrote it years ago though, when she became justice during her confirmation hearings, and I knew, of course, I predicted that she was going to be confirmed. It was obvious once, because the Republicans dominated uh, the Senate at the time. So yeah, so now we have four women at the same time. That's the largest, and of course, then the five men in opposition. So four women concurrently serving on the Supreme Court, while there are more women graduating from law schools. At least 55% uh, women are graduating from law schools. Um, yeah, so women have made great strides in the legal profession, from the first woman who practiced law in the 17th century, around 1638, and that's Margaret Brent. My name is Olorotimiosha, and I will stop this video here. And again, it's in honor of Women's History Month. I wanted to mention how, um, of course, the people who are called saphiophiles, right? Sexual people who admire intelligence in women. Many of us are, and of course, it's kind of ironic that uh, women were excluded from certain professions, including the law, because there was this stereotype, this crude stereotype that women were not logical and things like that. But nothing can be farthest from the truth. So this is an example. One of the sad things about entrenched patriarchy, the people who make the laws formulate all these false narratives to keep other people out, uh, not not focusing on reality, that it's out of bias, self-interest, self-preservation, why that they're excluding other people, and they formulate these false narratives that, well, the reason those people are being excluded, why they've created these laws to exclude other people, is because they don't have the ability to do that, which is not the case. The same thing with black people. Now, black people, black men especially, are heavily restricted from education, from the professions, and of course, it's still a legacy from the false racist narrative from slavery. Of course, during the era of slavery, blacks were prevented from studying, from getting an education. It was illegal. And even though we've just come out of Jim Crow in America, black people, of course, black Americans, they've just come out of Jim Crow in America in the 1960s. But you see, there's still that activism, that desire to go back to the past. They're still dealing uh, with atrocities and crimes against humanity, like the mass incarceration, which still uh, is a fig leaf to imprison, to enslave black men who've been convicted of crimes in America. And so obviously, there are still so many challenges and so many barriers to black men exercising their equal rights as citizens, and that's where the legal profession is pivotal to addressing those challenges and barriers. Um, the legal profession in England, in common law jurisdictions, lawyers are called, uh, they have this appellation of being learned. They call them my learned friend, learned lawyers, because it requires so much study, so much rigorous study. Um, I think, traditionally, in the ancient times, right, the profession that was presumed to require the most study used to be theology, right? So the doctorate, it used to be awarded to initially to theologians, right? So they were the ones who controlled education. That's the clergy during the Dark Ages, the Middle Ages, when the universities started to come up, right? And so the three professions that were known to be the most rigorous, that required the most rigorous study, with theology, medicine, and law. And so you see, in common law jurisdictions, they call lawyers learned, right? Learned in England, in Nigeria as well, which is my country of origin. They call lawyers there um, learned, right? Learned lawyer. Uh, and women have definitely earned the appellation in the 21st century. My name is Olurotimi Osha, and I will keep you posted. Thank you.